and thanks for staying up late for the FOX6 Sports Blitz. I'm Brandon Cruz, Lily Zhao alongside me, and you can see Tim Van Voren enjoying a Florida night in Jacksonville after the Packers win in Jacksonville against the Jaguars. Here's our starting lineup. The Packers have the leg up again on their opponent as they improve to 6-2. Happy Halloween from the Bucks as Giannis Antetokounmpo makes us say what? But on the court, it's been a slow start to the season for Milwaukee. And we'll head to the tennis court for this week's High School Hot Shot.
You know, we always, no matter what, we always going to be together. And no matter, the circumstance or no matter how much adversity we hit, we always going to make sure that we back each other.
The Packers back each other to a 30-27 win over the Jaguars in Jacksonville today. They do it with Brandon McManus with a walk-off field goal for a second week in a row. Tim, how big of a deal is it that they have a kicker they can trust? Now, granted, this one was a lot closer than the one last week, but still, he had to kick it through, and that's how they get their win.
There was a feeling of assurance today that it was going to go through. As you said, it was a shorter kick. Even McManus telling us on our special edition after the game that it was an easy kick. It was 24 yards right in the middle of the field. Last week, of course, a longer one, and you were losing the game at that point. But you can tell the Packers just feel if they get into field goal range, they can turn it over to their kicker now, and they haven't always felt that way.
And they now have to be able to turn it over to their backup quarterback, Malik Willis, playing a lot of this game because of a groin injury to Jordan Love. I know we've talked about it tonight in the special edition and all our newscasts throughout, but he is such a key component to this team winning. I mean, when he's played a majority of snaps, or at least a lot of snaps, they're 3-0. They don't win this without him having that confidence when he takes the field.
You're exactly right, and what an acquisition at the end of the preseason by Brian Gutekunst, and credit Malik Willis for picking up so quickly and being able to contribute the way he has. He was kind of thrust into those games early in the season, and he was definitely thrust into today's game. Hadn't been in the first team reps all week, was working with the scout team, and the mental reps still came in and produced. Wasn't just hand off and hope for Josh Jacobs. Malik Willis had to do some things in this game against the Jaguars, and he did without self-destructing.
And Tim, when you look at Malik Willis, what did you think of his composure down the stretch? Again, having had 2 starts under his belt earlier in the year, coming in with less than 2 minutes and having to lead this team on a game-winning drive, his composure, and as you mentioned it all night, his ability to play some clean football.
Well, the composure and the poise, I think, is why he's played that clean football and has probably built upon that and his confidence, Lily, because he knows he's stepped in and he's doing something here. He's playing a role that this team needs. I'm not sure he's really felt that way in the NFL. When he went to Tennessee, he was like, well, let's try this guy as a third-round pick. Here, the Packers have given him a specific role. They know they need him. They know they have goals this season that could require a backup quarterback contributing. And look how much he's had to contribute so far. As you said, it's been clean football with Willis. He's very popular in the locker room. And even when you hear him in his post-game press conferences, he's not all caught up in the moment. He's very matter-of-fact.
And with Jordan Love, again, dealing with that MCL, now it's a groin injury suffered today on that opening drive for Green Bay. Is there any sort of long-term concern for their quarterback?
You don't know. Those injuries can be tricky. They can linger or they can affect a player, or maybe he's back and ready to run around next week. You certainly saw it affect him in the first half today, and then as the game went along, even when he was throwing, he was just throwing off one foot and flinging it, which shows the arm strength and the control, but it just also showed how much he was hampered by that injury. And after the game, moving around okay, gave me the thumbs up in terms of yes or no, and he gave me the thumbs up. Looked good. His spirits seemed to be fine, but you just don't know how that injury is going to respond and what decisions the Packers will make near term and long term.
Yeah, that is something that we're going to have to pay a lot of attention to this week as they get ready for the Lions. But sticking with this game, another guy that really showed up today, and he has showed up ever since coming to the Packers, but it seemed to be a matter of importance today because of the role. Josh Jacobs, he seemed to be able to come up with the big run whenever they needed it, and he didn't seem to slow down whatsoever, even though he ran for 127 yards.
bang, 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 and that was even while Love was still in the game, and then you get out there, he's just bang, bang, bang again into all that contact. Josh Jacobs runs hard. He's got that low center of gravity. He's very powerful. Even when he's knocked back behind the line, those would be 4-yard losses for somebody else, and maybe a yard loss for Josh Jacobs. That makes a difference, too, over time. The Packers have really found they could lean on this guy. We heard all this stuff. We talked about him being a bellwether guy and that he could be a main running back. That's all been true. I would be a little concerned, though, at 8 weeks into the season, how much pounding he has taken so far this season. He seems to like it, though. He just comes on as the games go on.
Yeah, we've seen him do that with the Raiders in years past. The one thing that I'm wondering about him is we see what he does on the field. He's a nonstop guy. He's always going. But what's he like in that locker room? What do other guys think of him when they're around him or listening to him or watching him?
Kind of a happy-go-lucky guy, to be honest with you. He's had a smile on his face almost since he arrived in Green Bay. He's very supportive of other players around him. You know, the Packers these days have defensive and offensive players rooming or lockering right next to each other. You're not in cliques, and he's very supportive of the guys around him who don't play the same position, not even on the same side of the ball. He's quickly become one of the main veteran leaders on this team, even though he just arrived in this offseason as a free agent.
And behind him, of course, they have Emmanuel Wilson. Chris Brooks played well today. And, of course, Marshawn Lloyd still on IR. And we'll see when he officially is activated to play for the Packers. So maybe more help can come in the running back group as well. But, Tim, looking at the pass catchers group, I think Romeo Doubs, we talked about earlier in the season, wasn't targeted much. Of course, got that one-game suspension. But since his return, how has he responded? Because he made a couple big catches again today.
He hasn't responded outwardly, right? That's not a surprise from Romeo Doubs, but on the field, he has been money. Other than he had a drop today that could have been a score, I think, which really would have opened things up and had a little cushion at the end. That catch he had on the sideline, Jordan Love was still a quarterback at that point, the throw over the top, and the catch on the sideline, the snaring with the hands. Who's going to make a catch like that? Romeo Doubs is taller, he's graceful, he gets to certain spots on the field that other guys can't get to, and he's been a big, big part, as you said, of this Packer offense since coming back from his one-game suspension.
And talking about beautiful catches, that one from Malik Willis to Jaden Reed that goes for 51 yards and sets up, again, that game-winning field goal. How important, Tim, was that play? Because, as we have talked about, if they don't hit this one, probably not a good chance that they're going to go down there and score.
I wouldn't have seen them coming down methodically down the field for sure. So the big gainer was huge because it goes back to what we talked about with Brandon. You get into that position where now you're in field goal range, you have a reliable kicker. So Jaden Reed has not had the breakthrough games in the last few weeks that he did earlier in the year. Even those runs they do with Reed, teams have really bottled that up. But he got into that open field and he made it count.
And you're talking about breakthrough games. Tucker Kraft now, it seems like every week, is having a breakthrough game. Today he has a big catch over the middle that he takes deep into Jaguars territory. He adds a touchdown. I mean, he seems to have opened up this offense, and he becomes a security blanket for anybody who's throwing the ball for the Packers.
That's exactly right. If you remember last year, Luke Musgrave was the rookie starter at tight end. Now, Kraft has surpassed him and has surpassed a lot of guys in the NFL, and he plays with that strong style, that Tucker Kraft style that we're becoming familiar with very rapidly now. And Jordan Love was telling me about it this week. Yes, that is contagious. It rubs off on the other guys. Kraft says he wants to do that. He wants to give energy back to his team when he makes plays. Well, on the long play and the touchdown catch from Willis, he definitely gave energy back.
One of the things that really stood out today to me was Edgerrin Cooper on the defensive side. He just seemed to be going after the ball, and it always seemed to be in the right spot to make a big play. He had the strip sack. He had 9 tackles. I mean, he seemed to be everywhere, especially when they needed it. Is this somewhat of a surprise, seeing that he's still a rookie and still learning what the NFL is all about?
I think it's a surprise only he had such a quiet camp and preseason because he was battling a hip injury. He was a second-round draft choice. He was expected to be an impact player. Boy, he has been that. He's earned more snaps on the weekly basis, and he's more sound assured. You remember, beginning of the season, he made a big mistake in that Eagles game. He's cleaned up a lot of that stuff with coaching as we get to this point in the season. Today, Quay Walker was inactive due to the concussion he suffered last week. Edgerrin Cooper stepped right in. You did not see a drop-off, and the way Eric Wilson's been playing, that linebacker crew was pretty strong today. So Quay Walker coming back, you're going to have to find snaps for Edgerrin Cooper. And they have another linebacker, Tyron Hopper, who hasn't really played from scrimmage, but he could have a role before this is all said and done on this season as well. And then when you throw in the 2 rookie safeties, Evan Williams and Javon Bullard, you're getting a lot of pop out of these young defensive players.
You really are. And let's stick on the defensive side of the football, Tim. I think there's only one game all year. That was last week against the Texans. The Packers defense did not register one takeaway. Today they get two. And, of course, Xavier McKinney gets his 6th interception of the season. It kind of just seems inevitable at this point, Tim, that X is going to get a pick, and he got one today. But you talk about pivotal plays for this Packers defense to help out an offense without Jordan Love, and they did so again today.
Thank you, Trevor Lawrence, right? He threw it right to Xavier McKinney. McKinney has had a couple of those interceptions this season that were thrown right to him, and other times he's made nice plays on the ball. It was a big play in the game. McKinney, like we said earlier with Josh Jacobs, is definitely a defensive leader, even though he just arrived as a free agent in the offseason. He's so assured back there. He knows what he's doing, and the guys really feed off him. And then when you make the plays and come up with the ball, not just around the ball, you come up with the ball, that's huge.
And let's look big picture here, Tim, because, yes, it's a win against an AFC squad. But when you look at, again, just how tight the NFC North division is, and we can pull up those standings as well, just how important was this win for the Packers just to stay in contention with the team that they have coming into Lambeau next week?
It's very big. And John Kuhn on our post-game analysis during the special edition of Fox 6 News talked about how this is going to be some sort of battle at the top of the NFC North next week. You still have Minnesota in there with the 5 wins. 5 wins, I think, yep. And then Chicago is still above 500. And you know, other teams in the NFC, Washington keeps winning. So you do, even though this is an AFC game today and not a real impressive opponent, you have to win. You don't want to stub your toe and later in the season be playing games on the road in the playoffs because you lost a game like this.
Well, it's going to be a playoff-like atmosphere next weekend with the Lions coming. How big is this week, and who are you looking at besides Love to try to be healthy? Because obviously they're going to need everybody on deck.
Well, Jair Alexander would be a player. He got hurt late in the game, left with injury. I don't know an update on Jair at this point, and he's obviously been kind of in and out of the lineup. Certainly the Love situation is one to watch. You had on the offensive line, you had guys who were kind of moving around a little bit today. It was a hot day, but that was a factor to watch as well. And we talked about Quay Walker earlier. He didn't play today. Is he going to come back next week? So there are definitely spots where you're looking for health. I would say Devontae Wyatt's return to the defensive line was notable. He had been out with injury. And the Packers have been pretty healthy to this point this season as well. That should be acknowledged.
Yeah, we'll see how this week unfolds. Tim, thank you very much. The Wisconsin Badgers, they had another chance to be a top 5 team at Camp Randall last night. However, it was a tough second half against third-ranked Penn State that leads to their 28-13 loss. The Badgers are now 0-5 against ranked teams under Luke Fickell. We're going to be right back with Say What.
Do I vote? I don't even know if I vote for her.
You really want to ask that question out of the gate?
I just like getting people's attention with something.
My significant other thinks he's sexy, so.
Wow. That was interesting. Was that Taylor Swift?
You're going to go to practice, you're going to come back, you're going to interact with the kids, then you're going to take a nap, and then we have a costume ready for you. You're going to put that costume, it doesn't matter what you feel.
Oh, welcome back to the Fox 6 Sports Blitz for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Happy wife, happy life, right? And that's what he wore for Halloween, Mr. Potato Head from Toy Story. So you have to love the commitment. I think he was Hulk last year. So
yes,
fun.
He was.
It's fun to watch. All right, let's get rolling here on the Bucks. And Tim Van Four, of course, out for us here in Jacksonville, Florida. And Brandon, when you look at the Bucks, they're 1-2 to start the season. They beat the Knicks to start the year. Then they lose to a real rebuilding Bulls team in their home opener. They lose to a real rebuilding Nets team tonight as well. What's going on?
Well, I mean, when they faced the Sixers, they had a team that was missing their 2 stars. I mean, when Paul George and Joel Embiid are sitting down, that kind of opens things up. And it's a nice win. They go in there and they look good. But what's happening here is they seem to still be guarding the rim and the paint, but all of a sudden, teams are shooting threes at a lightning pace. I mean, the Bulls especially were unable to miss, it felt like, when they were shooting threes against this team downtown. And when that starts to happen, that's the old Bucks. That's what we've seen for years now, them not be able to guard on the perimeter, and it just really kind of put them in a spot. And then they didn't have anyone else to rely on offensively. It was just Giannis and Dame. Bobby was fine, and he did well, but there was no other consistent shooter on this team like we saw in the season opener where Taurean Prince was really good from the outside and delivered with 16 points.
Right, and then Tim, when you're looking at this Bucks team, I know it's 3 games into the season. It's a long year, but are you surprised at how lackluster they look? I mean, they spent a lot of time together during training camp out in California. Guys praised just being closer together this season. You have a core group returning, but this is kind of the effort that they put forth to start the season.
Lackluster is a pretty good word, Lily. That's kind of the way they look. I was at the home opener, crowd's juiced, everybody's trying to push them along, and they didn't answer the bell when it really mattered against the Bulls. The game just kind of slipped away from them, and those are the Bulls who aren't awesome. Brandon talked about the perimeter shooting that they've struggled with so far this season. That goes back way before Doc Rivers, guys making corner threes against the Bucks defense. So, yes, to be honest with you and answer your question directly, I am surprised the way this team has gotten out of the box.
And we talked about, all offseason about how the hype was around the other teams in the Eastern Conference and the Bucks were kind of being overlooked. But of course, Brandon, with how they're playing to start the week, I know it's still early though. I mean, it's they're leaving a lot of teams and with, we can beat the Bucks this year. But when you look at what Giannis has been able to do on the court so far this season, coming off that injury, what have you seen so far?
Well, I mean, he's looked good and he's delivered in the minutes he's had. He's been able to do it mainly going inside to get his points. He's also been very strong defensively. And that's what they need from him, obviously. They need the offense from Damian Lillard. They need Bobby Portis to continue to score like he does. But they need something else, and they need, I think, more energy. They need something on defense to kind of fire them up. They need some more maybe anger out there. And I think we're going to get a real test for where they stand in Game 4, because tomorrow night, that comes fast. They go to the world champion Celtics, who clearly look like they're already playing at a world champion level right now.
Yeah, if you don't have a lack of focus tomorrow night, it might be another bad night for Milwaukee. And Tim, again, you mentioned you were at that Bulls game. What have you seen in terms of the chemistry of Giannis and Dame? Because, of course, they didn't practice together during the offseason, but, of course, they are playing together now.
Damian was asked specifically about that. He says it's much improved. You think it's only going to improve going forward. The two-man game that they were able to run, you saw a little bit of it there on Friday night when they had the Bulls in town. You haven't seen a ton of it, though, when they're both out there together. That's the key. Doc Rivers says you're going to have to have at least one guy on the court at all times, but the Bucks are going to need two, particularly as Brandon talked about. They haven't had a lot after those two, so they need points right now. Those two are going to have to mesh effectively.
They certainly will have to. All right, we'll see if the Bucks can improve. All right, we will be right back with our high school hot shot. Welcome back. She had never played her sport until freshman year, but she wanted to follow in her mother's footsteps. And like she's done in so many other areas of her life, it didn't take long for her to prove why she was worthy of a leadership position. That's why she is this week's Fox 6 High School Hot Shot.
Hi, my name is Lily Bowman, and I'm a senior at Muskego High School. I'm in the band, and I play tennis. I am one of 3 drum majors for our marching band. When I was a freshman, that was my goal. I just love calling them to attention, which is detail, attend, hot, and then they all respond, hot. I also am in both jazz bands. I play trombone in Jazz 2, and I play trumpet in Jazz 1. I also play #1 singles on the tennis varsity team. So I actually picked up a racket my freshman year. It's crazy. I don't know how it happened besides the hard work that I've done in the off season, but I picked it up this summer before freshman year, and now I'm #1 singles my senior year. So I played the trumpet in 6th grade. That's when band started, and before COVID, we would pick out an instrument by playing all of them and washing the mouthpieces and playing them. The only 2 instruments that I could play was the flute and the trumpet. So I chose the flute first. I just didn't feel like it was for me, so I tried trumpet, and ever since then I've kind of stuck with it, and I love it. I've been playing piano since I've been 9 years old. I've been participating in competitions, and I've done lessons ever since then. Some of the things I've won: Federation, piano solos. I just got into NHS, honorable mention for tennis this year, sportsmanship award for tennis as well, scholar athlete award. I've been accepted into Indiana Wesleyan University and Wisconsin Lutheran College, and I would like to pursue nursing. Being a pediatric nurse would be my dream job, or a travel nurse, which I would love. I've always wanted to just kind of shine the kindness and the light that I have Hi, my name is Lily Bowman, and I am a senior at Muskego High School, and I am one of the MHS Marching Band drum makers. And I'm this week's FOX6 High School Hotshot.
And thanks for staying up with us on the FOX6 Sports Blitz. We'll see you next week after the Packers take on the Lions. For Tim, Lily, I'm Brandon. See you then.